going on? No Horsing Around family. Zach Boyd back at it again. Drake Wally, Horseshoe Huddle, nice enough to join us on the live stream. Guys, we're going to talk about free agency. We're going to hit you with a little bit of quarterback talk. Obviously, we can't go on and do anything this time of the year without talking about quarterback. But Drake, man, how you been? I know you guys have been super busy. A lot of stuff you guys are doing with the combine, a lot of articles you're putting out. How you been, man?
I've been doing really good, and like you said, it's just been busy. Ballard had arguably the busiest first week of free agency I've ever seen. The guy have, and so it provided a lot of content. But it's nice to see, that the draft is just approaching about a month away. It's going to be the high tide, though, or excuse me, the high time for all of the fog, all of the mist. So be careful what you believe. Be sure to read your sources. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. I mean, no matter what side of the fence you're on, here's what I will say, Drake. It's an exciting time to be an Indianapolis Colts fan because you've got all of these hypotheticals, all of these weird nuances going on, whether you're on the Lamar Jackson train or you're on the, like you, Anthony Richardson train, or if you're on the Will Levis train, or if you're on the trade back now, we've heard in the last week a little bit of Hendon Hooker talk, even kind of sprinkle in there. No matter where you're at, you're obviously going to get your cup of tea when it comes to all of that. Sure looks like CJ Stroud down there at that pro day. Carolina Panthers were just enamored by CJ Stroud. So I think McCown might have even let the cat out the bag saying, when we get you in Charlotte, we might be able to play a little ball. So I don't know what that's all about, but just in general, you mentioned it earlier. I just haven't had a chance to have a conversation. Your take with free agency. What have you liked? What have you not liked? Just kind of run down through the free agency. Anything in particular stands out to you? Just the approach of how we're going about this year, Drake?
Well, Ballard. It's so interesting because with free agency and how fast of a start it's been, it all really goes back to Ballard. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, okay, 22. He's been active, but kind of more toward draft time. He's been incredibly active right out of the gate. And I know that, you and I were, we were pretty active on Twitter. All you saw was, oh, well, we're going to be sleeping. We're going to be like waiting for that. Did not happen. He definitely came out firing, which tells me that Ballard, two things. One, he's willing to try to accommodate for a new coach. He wants this coach to be successful. He's trying to give the team on both ends what they need to make him successful. But also I think that he knows his seat is it's not nice and cool and vacation anymore. It's pretty hot. I don't think he can afford another complete pitfall, 2, 3, 4 win season, even with a rookie. I don't know if that's going to help him, stick around as GM. So I think he understands, hey, I got to make some changes. He's a professional. He's smart and he knows how to do it. And this is just a way of him showing it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Adam Roberts, thanks for hopping in. New subscriber. Thanks for joining the No Horsing Around family. Hit us up in the comments, Adam. What section you sit in? I'm a season ticket holder myself as well. Maybe we'll meet up. Maybe we'll get a chance to kind of have a chat before the game and just kind of talk a little bit of ball. Adam Roberts also apparently is a AR-15 fan. So I think you and Drake will get along as we go down the live stream. If I think about some of the signings that we've had, and I know he got a little bit of flack for this when we signed Matt Gay right out of the gates, the highest paid contract. But I'll say this, there's going to come a time in this next 4-year period where you're going to have that guy march out there, Drake, and you're going to be really, really happy that he signed this guy to be your kicker, right? You pay for peace of mind in some way, some regard. We've just been, I know if you're a Colts fan, you've been a Colts fan for the last 2 years. Every time we kick a field goal, you got one eye open, one eye closed. It's just about that simple. Sneaky good signing. I like the McKenzie signing. It gives you a player and an element that you've just not had, in the past. Of course, you had Paris Campbell. There's no doubt about it. But McKenzie plays much differently, right? He's a little bit different player, a little more sideline to sideline, not just north and south. That gives you a little bit of a different dynamic. Is there anybody that, as far as do you have a favorite signing of the free agency class so far, or is there anybody left out there that you think, man, I'd love to kick the tires on this guy, just to see what's going on with that.
It's really interesting. I think that if I'm talking about a signing that really made me excited, I do really like the Isaiah McKenzie signing. It's fantastic, but I really like the Samson Ebukam or Abukum, I believe, signing, because this is a guy that constantly will get pressure on a quarterback. He's probably going to start in Odangbo's spot, and he provides a ridiculous depth piece. And I know that he hasn't had any more than about 5 sacks a season. You're talking about a guy who's been on the 49ers defense. He's being given reins now to go out there. I think he's a potential 10-plus sack guy. He's essentially Yannick Ngakoue, only 2 things. 1, he can defend the run, and 2, he should be out there for more than 60% of the snaps. So nothing personal against Yannick. It's just, he was kind of a straight line runner to the quarterback. He's a pass rusher at heart, and they just had him out there for rundowns. So I think that the Ebukam signing is huge. One that kind of also made me pretty excited is the one you mentioned, and that's Matt Gay. And to go back to what you said, you're talking about last year Vinatieri, brutal. Okay. Then you're talking about Blankenship, who was all over the place. You could never really trust him. Then you have Chase McLaughlin, who, yes, he did well, but he also has bounced around the NFL for years and has never landed until now. So, to pay money for a guy who is 101 out of 115 in his career and 17 for 23 from 50 plus, I mean, you don't have to worry about kicker. Do you really want to worry about punter and kicker?
Yeah.
No, shore that away. Yeah. I like that signing.
I mean, I think it was a sneaky good signing, honestly. I mean, you got a premier player at a position that's not necessarily a premier you don't think about, but teams who have great kickers, that's an upper hand in big, close games. And sure would have been nice, week 1 last year when we were trying to go out there and kick a field goal, if we had a guy who could put one through, start the season off with a win. I want to get through some of these comments as we're going through. Adam, I'm going to hit your comment here in a minute because I love the question and I want to take it to the whole chat. But I'll get to that in a second. Colton, thanks, man. Ebukam has a motor where he's just not going to stop, right? Like he's just going to go after the quarterback all game long. Let me go up here and get my man. This is a crazy question, and I want to hear your thoughts, Drake, first. If the top 3 quarterbacks go by 4, so that we're talking about in this scenario, Adam lays it out 1, 2, 3. Let's just say Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, 1, 2, 3, in whichever order. Which Will are you taking with the 4th pick? Will Anderson or Will Levis? Man, that's going to be probably the question of the night. Honestly, I haven't thought about that, and I love when people bring these types of ideas up. I'll go first, give you a chance to kind of think about this.
Yeah.
I'm going to say neither, Adam. I'm going to say we are in that situation. I think Chris Ballard trades back. I don't think that necessarily happens that way. I can't. It's never happened. There's never been 4 quarterbacks taken with the first 4 picks, and I don't think this year is going to change that. I have changed my mind considerably when it comes to Anthony Richardson over the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I heard a guy, and I'd love to say this was my own take, but I heard a guy the other day when we listened to a podcast, and he had a very good point. When you go to the convenience store and you get you a scratch off, right? You get you a $5 scratch off and you're like, hey, man, that's got me a tall boy beer to drink. Going to get me a scratch off. We're going to have a good night and see if we have a little luck. What you're doing on those scratch offs, you're going to pick the $5 that has the best, biggest jackpot, right? And that's what Anthony Richardson is. I mean, if you scratch that one off and you hit, he's going to give you everything that you want and then some. Big question, though. Can he be accurate in the NFL? And that's something that we're not going to be able to answer in the next couple months. That's only going to be answered when he gets on the actual football field, gets under the center, whomever he plays for. That's a great question, though. Would you pick Will Anderson, Will Levis, or would you trade back in that scenario?
It's interesting because if it's Ballard, like you said, a Ballard move would be like, yeah, I don't like any of these guys. We're trading back. We're grabbing capital. That is a that is exactly what Ballard, I think, would do in that situation.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do think that Will Levis, if I have to pick, look, I really do think so highly of Odangbo. I think so highly of Pay. And I do think that Abukum is going to bring a different type of attitude. And I think they're also going to draft a defensive end too, because there's just so many freakishly athletic ones in the draft.
Yeah.
I'd go Will Levis because, I understand Levis has gotten hate for some reason. But the guy is a freakish athlete. He's built like Andrew Luck. He's got all the mobility that you need. I think that sometimes he stands in the pocket and takes unneeded hits. But look, you got Shane Steichen. I think that he would be able to work with any one of these top 4 guys. And I'd have to take Levis. It'd be so hard to pass on Anderson. But given what the Colts have and what they're building, I think they'd be okay to take quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, just hard for me to wrap my head around them not walking out of this draft with the 4th pick and not taking a quarterback, right?
Yeah.
Like just the onslaught from whether it's fair or not, right? Like the onslaught from the fan base and hell, probably even the owner, in there just boiling over thinking, are you kidding me? We're sitting here 4th and we didn't get a quarterback. But I will say this, if you're going to get the 4th best quarterback when you have the 4th pick, that doesn't look good for you. If you're sitting there as a general manager, you got people scratching their heads saying, how in the hell did this happen? Like, how do we not end up getting at least a top 3 when you got the 4th pick? Should be very interesting. Speaking of those picks, if you had to rank, and I know we've talked a long time ago about ranking these guys, but if you had to put them in order, Richardson, Levis, Young, and Stroud, where are you at right now today? Now, I know that can change because we still have some pro days that are going to come about and all of that stuff and some more information that will leak out in the weeks to come up to the draft. Where would you rank those 4 in order for you as far as preference?
Preference. I really like going for the ceiling. So my preference would be probably Richardson 1. I think I know it's just a pro day, but man, after seeing Bryce Young go out there and really dazzle everybody with his accuracy and ability to throw over the top of taller defensive players, by the way. I'd put him at 2, Stroud at 3, and Levis at 4. Now, realistically, I think that if the Colts had their option and they were number 1 picking, they'd say Stroud, Young, Richardson, and then Levis. I just think Levis falls all the way in the back because you got Stroud, who's the pure passer. Young is the most pro-ready, complete guy. And Richardson's the athletic freak. Levis kind of has sprinkles of all of that. But he's kind of an enigma right now with Hendon Hooker because you're kind of putting both of them on the outside of these top 3 guys. But I do think, as it needs to be known, Will Levis, I do think he could be very successful in the NFL. We'll just have to see.
Yeah, I think you're right. Levis gives a little bit of maybe unnecessary hate, right? He's kind of the guy who draws the short straw when it comes right down to it. There's a lot to like with Will Levis, and full transparency, you could probably talk me into any 4 of those guys. Like I could find, you could make a case for all of them, and you might even be able to make a case against all of them. If you're really being that critical of every single player, and you're going to go down the list. Bryce Young, obviously, it's the height and it's the build that you're concerned about. When you talk about C.J. Stroud, definitely did struggle under pressure. I think most quarterbacks do, if we're being honest, but he did struggle underneath pressure. He got a little stiff. Will Levis, as the game went on, I think the only thing that kind of scares me with Levis a little bit, Drake, is the fact that Levis, he has a lot of untimely turnovers, and a lot like quarterbacks with big arms, what they do in the biggest moments, especially under pressure, under stress, they just rear back and throw that football, man. I mean, they believe all their life they've been able to throw that football and fit it in there. And as the competition level gets higher, especially going into the NFL, you're going to have to be able to throw with touch. You can't just throw that ball in there. As we saw, we had Jacob Eason here a couple of years ago. That's a guy who just did not know how to have any touch on the football. Now, don't make any mistake about it. These 2 prospects are not even close in comparison. I think Will Levis is a hell of a lot better. And I think Levis, I don't know, man. I mean, I think you could kind of get a little bit of a Daniel Jones feel out of him too. I think he has a much more upside with his arm, but when I say Daniel Jones, I mean with his legs. Like Daniel Jones was effective at the end of the year with his legs. Like it was a real threat. You had to know that he could take off and run and get first downs. So there is that element to Levis that you'd have to like. And he's pretty confident, man. I mean, he is confident in his ability to play the game of football. So that should be interesting. Let's get through some of these comments. Colton, in my opinion, Ballard has nearly lost this draft, and we have the 4th pick. We all know we won't trade for 3, and I guarantee we get jumped by someone else, and they take AR-15. We lose out completely. My question would be, who's going to jump us? I mean, Carolina's already jumped us. The Raiders have already taken Jimmy G, and they're not going to – I mean, who's going to jump us? I mean, it'd be a pretty big jump, right? I mean, I think so. We'll just have to see. We might just hold pat at 4 and just see what we can't get out of that. Interesting, though, Anthony Richardson and Gardner Minshew down there in Florida doing a little workout sesh.
Yeah. One of the things I was actually going to say is it doesn't. One of the interesting things is I don't know. I'd have to look it up. I don't think isn't Seattle 5th.
Yep, they are.
Okay, so I don't believe that they have re-signed Drew Lock. Okay, which I'd have to look it up. But even if they do,
Well, they got Geno.
They put Geno in the reins there, and I'm telling you, you've got a sensation who could have arguably been Rookie of the Year in Kenneth Walker. You have a coach in Pete Carroll who knows how to use tight ends, and who I think they picked up one. Maybe they didn't. But regardless, you have Tyler Lockett, you have DK Metcalf. Those are 2 guys, along with Kenneth Walker. That's a team that really would fit Anthony Richardson, I think, pretty decent. So I wouldn't put it past the one team that I think it's a wild card, but I think that they might go forward and say, look, we're going to jump 2 spots, and we're going to get the guy to sit behind Geno. Now, I do think, though, I can't remember who mentioned the comment, but I do think there is a chance that the Colts do jump to number 3. I know that they don't generally trade up, but I think that once they saw what Carolina did, Carolina shook up the entire draft by jumping to number 1. The Colts could pretty much guarantee themselves a top 3 quarterback if they just jump like 1 additional spot, and it would not be anywhere near what Chicago got from Carolina. So don't be surprised if either the Colts do move up 1 spot, or I think it's kind of a wild card that Seattle might try to put Richardson behind Geno. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that you could think about anyways, right? I mean, and anything is possible. My man Steven popping in here. Love seeing you on here. Love seeing you make that comment. Take care of your family and get back on track, and we'll talk soon. I think that when you it's so fascinating, but I want to get off onto another tangent, and I just am real curious in your idea of this. Hendon Hooker, I've never really flirted with the possibility of that happening, but the more you hear about it, the more you have to at least entertain the idea, right? Like, I mean, you have to at least think about what that would look like. What are your thoughts on Hendon Hooker as far as a potential trade back and then select Hendon Hooker?
The thing is, if Hendon Hooker doesn't have a season-ending injury, we're probably talking about him differently. I know that he's a little on the older side, but look, this is, I'll just go ahead and say it. This is referencing an article that made a decent point from Greg Doyle of the Indy Star, and that is that, look, if you can get Hendon Hooker and get 10 to 15 good years out of the guy, it's like no one, and you went back in the draft to get additional capital. It's genius. Okay, well, Greg, respect you, but that would, of course, be great if it happened, but nobody knows if that's going to happen, and that's a big chance to take. But I got to say, Hendon Hooker, his ceiling is a little bit more recognizable, so you know what you're going to get a little more. He's probably more pro ready than anyone because he has the age, the experience. I do think that the biggest thing that's knocking him back is that injury. But I'm telling you, I think that if the Colts are sitting there and they're like, we don't like any one of these guys, I would not put it past him to say, you know what, there's one guy we had a top 30 visit with, Hendon Hooker. We liked him. They think really highly of him. Is there a chance that they take him? Yes. Is it great? Probably not. So Hendon Hooker fans out there, just don't hold your breath, but you never know. I do think that he would fit pretty decent in this offense, though. And I know that Minshew's not much older than him. But again, Minshew's been in the NFL, I think, like 4 or 5 years, and he
Yeah.
is already a backup at Hendon Hooker's age right now. So it'd be interesting. And I think the Colts, there's the tiniest chance they make that work. They do that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, here's the only gripe and argument I have against Anthony Richardson if we select him. Everything that they've said pre and post combine, the biggest trait that they're looking for is accuracy, right? And like he's obviously that he doesn't possess accuracy right now. Now that doesn't mean he can't develop into an accurate quarterback, but right now you don't see that on film. You see a very inconsistent pass thrower. He's a young kid too, man. I mean, he's a super raw, freakish athlete. But with Hendon Hooker, hell, he might be the most accurate of any of them, right? Like, and when you look at his stats, and I believe if you go over the last couple years, I think he's only thrown like 4 or 5 interceptions with all of those passes in that Tennessee offense as well. So definitely it has my, I'll put it this way. It has my antennas up a little bit. Just the possibility. Probably not the most likely, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Domo, thank you so much for hopping in here. Let's see. What is if the Ballard walked the talk and about what he said describing his quarterback, he would have traded for the first for CJ. Yeah, that's still a sore subject for me a little bit. You know, I think he had every I think he basically felt that Chicago was bluffing. That's my theory. I don't think he thought Chicago was being that serious that early on. Clearly, they were not bluffing, right? I mean, they got one hell of a package. And whether you agree with that or disagree with it, here we sit at 4, and we know we're not going to get a quarterback at 1 or 2. It's either going to be 3 or 4, and we just have to kind of live with that. Any free agents as far as like position groups, players in particular, Drake, that you're looking for as we move on in kind of the second week and the second wave of free agency? Is there any guy out there you're thinking, man, it might be nice to, you know, get a guy like that in here to kind of help this football team get going in the right direction?
Well, real quick, I wanted to mention, so definitely understand where Colton's coming from. You want to have the number 1 pick, but keep in mind, let's say that you trade, and let's say that the Colts now give what Carolina did. So you're going to put, by the way, no Paris Campbell. Yes, you get Isaiah McKenzie, but you're going to probably get rid of Michael Pittman Jr.
Yep.
Okay. So you're also giving away the number 9 pick. You're giving away a second rounder, number 61 in 2023, the first rounder for 24, second rounder for 25, and obviously Michael Pittman Jr. That is really, really making the wide receiver and pass catching like side of things really scarce for your rookie. I think Chris Ballard was just, 1, he's just conservative, and 2, he was probably thinking, I don't want to take that chance. So
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from, but I also do understand him just like saying, holy cow, that's kind of scary. So I will say though, gosh, if there was I think it's really important right now to get a right guard. I
Yes,
think
I
that the
agree.
Colts need to, in fact, I wrote a piece on this. Yeah. So you got to think last year, we had Braden Smith play 79 snaps, Matt Pryor, 212, Danny Pinter, 216, and Will Fries, 641. 4 different starting right guards.
Yeah.
I do think that the Colts should pick up, I believe it's, let me see here. Okay, here, yeah, it's Gabe Davis from Gabe Jackson from the Seahawks. He's like 32 years old. He's a veteran. They need a right guard to push Will Fries, and I do think that they should still pick up at least 1 more free agent wide receiver and draft 1 just for depth. They still need it.
I would agree with that 100%. I mean, you can go out there and get someone that can definitely help you, as well as obviously if you're not trading any of those picks and you're just staying pat there at 4, you definitely are going to have a prime opportunity to get somebody day 2 And if you trade back, you might even get somebody day one, for me, I love, I love Smith and Jigba, but that's kind of a pipe dream for me. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's probably one of the most well qualified wide receivers in this draft. It should be very, very interesting. And this is kind of Chris Ballard's time too, Drake, right? He, like, after everybody spends all of their money, he likes to go into the part where now he gets to negotiate a little bit. You don't really get to negotiate those first few days. It's like, hey, give me the most money or hang up the phone. That's just pretty much how free agency goes. Now it's a little bit more of a, hey, I want to go and I want to get the right fit. I want to take my family to the right city. I want to see what they're building. I want to talk to them. You bring people in for visits, stuff like that. So it really should be interesting. I definitely think right guard, I would not be opposed to going up and picking an inline tight end as well, like a guy who can just smash you. I think that's something that we missed a little bit last year. We just need a little bit more of a Jack Doyle-esque player. Maybe not even the pass catcher that Jack Doyle was, just the blocker, because he really, really elevated that unit, honestly. I mean, we have felt the effects of Jack Doyle not playing on this football team last year. We just were not the same football team when it comes to blocking. Adam says, what up, Herb? We got Sam Laporta from Iowa. We want Darnell. Zero chance that they draft Carter. Worst culture fit of all time. So Colton's not a big fan of drafting Jalen Carter. I don't think Chris Ballard's probably going to do that either. So I think if you don't want that to happen, I think you're going to be safe in this draft as far as that goes. Man, he loves those defensive players, though. Like, how shocked would you be if he's sitting there at 4 and he says, you know what, I'm pulling the plug on Will Anderson. I'm just going to do it. And
I wouldn't be shocked, because here's the thing. I know that Colts fans have been a little bit salty towards Ballard's conservativeness, but I think that he's so ridiculously quick-witted and intelligent that I think he overthinks these things every now and again.
Yeah.
Look, you're at number 4. I think you need a quarterback. All right, you just need a quarterback really bad. I do think that if they did go with Will Anderson, wow, that would be probably one of the biggest shockers. But then again, it's Chris Ballard. I know that I know we're talking about the Colts, but this is one of the most savvy, in a way, I guess, if you want to call it that, guys in the NFL who will just kind of, while everyone else is picking at the food, he'll just sit back and just kind of analyze things, and he just waits. So if that's why this whole jumping ahead of himself, like he usually does with free agents this year, was so shocking. But again, I think it's because he knows his seat's pretty hot. So don't be surprised if you see more signings.
Yeah, I would not be shocked whatsoever. Want to take a quick second to thank each and every one of you who have already taken time out of your busy schedule to join us on this live stream, as well as joining the No Horsing Around family. If you haven't joined the No Horsing Around family, we invite you guys to do that. As well as, if you get a sec after this is over, go and check Drake out over Horseshoe Huddle. Him and Andrew, they do a great job. We love having them on as well. So join our family and join their family. Smash that like button, just like Adam said. Hit us with those comments. And we're just so grateful to have you. I never want to lose sight of that. Let's transition to kind of our last topic of the day. And we really want you guys to get going on this in the chat as well. Lamar Jackson. Definitely some conflicting things, some conflicting thoughts. Here's an NFL MVP, Drake, who has absolutely the same amount of offers as we do right now in free agency, which would be 0. He has from what we know anyways, he has no real traction. There's no real steam going on. What say you with Lamar Jackson? Like it, hate it, kind of meh in the middle? Thoughts?
I'm the kind of guy that the first thing I look at when you're about to spend that kind of money is injury history. That's the first thing I always look at. That's one of the reasons I think that Ballard was kind of like, I'll pass on Paris Campbell. That's what really concerns me. I will say, though, number one, I am not in the Lamar Jackson I'm not on Team Lamar. I think that what they're going to have to pay him, plus Jim Irsay would have to give up $200 million right away and put it in escrow to get Lamar. And I know he's like worth 4 or 5 billion, but to have 200 million on hand and just be like, okay, here you go.
Yeah.
That's a couple of the NFL owners, even though they're all billionaires, they don't have that kind of cash flow. So it's a lot of money. So I don't know if that happens, but I will say I have had the greatest of dreams just about a Shane Steichen running back committee of Deion Jackson, Zach Moss, and the Jonathan Taylor with a guy like Lamar Jackson, a downfield threat like Alec Pierce, a burner like Isaiah McKenzie. Can you imagine Jelani Woods with Lamar Jackson? Michael Pittman Jr., it'd be the best team Lamar's had, period, offensively. I mean,
Yeah.
there's not even really a contest. Would love it. It's not going to happen. It's so much for Ballard to give up and Irsay. If they did not have to give up the house, though, I bet you that they have legitimately talked about this and at least said, hey, so Lamar's a free agent. What do you think? So do I think it happens? No. Would it be great? Absolutely. But it would cost so much money.
Well, not just that, but you're going to have to get rid of somebody on this current team, right?
Yeah.
Do that. Like you
Shaq Leonard probably.
You can't just sign a guy and not have the money to pay him, right? Like you mentioned earlier, obviously the escrow, but not just that, but you got to have the money to actually sign him day one and give him something,
Yeah.
$50 million, man, that's a pretty big pill to swallow. For a guy you mentioned earlier is coming off a couple injuries. So you've got that to contend with. We don't know if he really wants guaranteed money, like 100% guaranteed or not. He's not going to get it. I would think at some point the realization would kick in with him in this negotiating process. It could get really ugly down there in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson if it's not already gotten ugly. I know the NFL Players Association sent out something this evening saying do not talk to this guy who's not an agent.
Just a dude.
He's just a guy. He's
just a guy.
Yeah, man. I mean, hey, but everybody needs somebody like that in their corner, Drake. Just calling teams up saying, hey, this is what we want, man. And they're like, who in the hell are you? Calling me and talking to me about Lamar Jackson. So this gets weird. This gets fascinating. I think the weirdest part for me, though, is that not one team has got desperate enough to go out there and say, let's give it a shot. That is a little bit fascinating, but it should be interesting. I want to get through some of these comments. Let's see. Reserve says we'd have to get rid of Buckner, Moore, and Kelly would be gone. I think you're probably not too far off on that. Imagine AR, JT, and Drew Ogletree, Pierce and Pitt on the outside, McKenzie in the slot. I like it.
Drew Ogletree will be the Jack Doyle of the blocking committee, but can you imagine Jelani Woods? I'm telling you, dude, that dude's going to eat rough.
This isn't a rebuild. Trade back and get some draft capital.
He's saying trade Buckner.
Trade Buckner and get some draft capital. I don't know if I like that or not, man.
I'm telling you, I will just say this. There was a game in 2020 that I can remember where Phillip Rivers was the quarterback, and Buckner was out in the second game against the Tennessee Titans. And they destroyed the Colts just by running it right up the middle just because Buckner wasn't there. I'm telling you, you would miss him.
I don't know. I just think he has an affinity for Buckner. I don't think it happens. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I don't really think I don't think any big moves are going to happen for the Indianapolis Colts, if I'm being honest.
It's more retooling than rebuildling, I think. I don't think they're rebuilding, but they are retooling for sure.
Yeah, they're getting younger. They're trying to get some weapons, and I think they're definitely gearing up for a younger quarterback. Like to mention, though, Gardner Minshew, I thought that was a sneaky good signing. 1 year, $3.5 million, potential for $5.5 million. Here's a guy who's not just a guy coming off the bench. He could go out there and actually compete and win you some football games if you have to. Just thoughts on Gardner Minshew.
I know that people, when this signing happened, they were like, oh, well, this tips the hat to a more raw quarterback. No, after you have 3 quarterbacks start for you in a single year, you want stability at the backup position. This is no offense to Sam Mellinger. The Colts are keeping it for 2 reasons. Number one is because he's not ready to be a backup quarterback and the mentor. Like, he also is developing himself and he's still on his rookie deal. So you got to think whether they get Young or Stroud, that's a mentor for you. Well, if you get Levis or Richardson, that's a potential day one starter who is going to help bring them into the right mold of the NFL because it's way quicker than college. I don't think it tips the hat. I think it's a fantastic signing. It's a 1-year deal, like 3.5 with incentives. It's just there. Gardner Minshew also said that he is there to do whatever they need him to do. So it's a great signing, great locker room guy, great morale builder.
Yeah. I mean, I think I like it because obviously now you got a guy in your room who clearly knows Shane Steichen's offense, been there for 2 years. And
Yep.
here's a guy who doesn't have to learn everything from scratch, right? And what better to have, especially if you're a young quarterback, to have a guy who's teaching you the offense that knows the offense. There's a big difference between a guy teaching you the offense and he's still learning the offense versus a guy who actually has ran that offense and done that. Herbside said Minshew's a baller. AR is going to take a second to get going, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
he will, definitely. It's
will.
going to be hard to believe he'll start day one. And if he does, it could be a lot of running. A lot of running.
Yeah, I mean, that guy's going to be – he's going to be one of those guys that you're going to be like –
So you're nervous.
Yeah, you're going to just be freaking out because you're going to be like, oh, my gosh, he's like – doesn't know what he's doing, and the next thing you know is he ducks underneath the defensive end and he takes off and runs for 75 yards for a touchdown. And then the next time it's like, bro, that was a 5-yard pass and you overthrew him by 2 yards.
Double coverage right across the middle for a pick six.
There's just going to be that weird thing that goes on with him at first. I don't know. Maybe they look at him and they say to themselves, I think we can, we can really do something with this kid because there's no question. Just from his athletic standpoint alone, I mean, you look at what Fields did last year with his legs. Like he really came on with his legs, and I believe that you're getting that plus some juice. I mean, you're getting a big, sturdy guy, man. I mean, that can run people around, over, through, whatever you want to do. I mean, he's got that potential. Let's see what Adam's got to say. I believe Ballard can keep building a good roster, even with the current team gone the past and the prime. Ballard is still a builder. Just wish he looked for more weapons. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of wanted to see Adam Thielen possibly come in there as a veteran guy, but I think it is what it is at this point. And I don't know if we're going to get splash signings, but I think I'll expect a lot of glue signings in the next couple of weeks. And then we probably take a pause until the draft, and then we kind of fill in the cracks after we go out there and get players. Tyrell Hubbard has a great question. Why is Nick Foles still on this team? Don't know. I'll be honest with you. That's weird, but I don't know if there's really any incentive to go out there and just cut them, though.
So, like, it's actually I can elaborate a little bit on that. So Ryan's contract was different than Foles's, and I actually learned this from my co-host on the Horseshoe Huddle, Andrew. He like explained it that Ryan's contract was guaranteed on March 17th, so they had to cut him. Yeah. Before they gave him that guaranteed money, they saved themselves $17 million. Foles, I think, can literally be cut like a couple of maybe even a month or two before the regular season.
Yeah.
So like they don't have to they can just take their time and say, hey, what is his role? Can he fit with a rookie quarterback? Because look, this is the biggest decision this team has faced in 25 years. Okay, because they knew clear cut they were getting Andrew Luck in 2020. Or 2012. They didn't know this was going to happen at the start of last year. So this is a huge decision. So if they feel like Foles can somehow fit the mold, they'll keep him, but they also save like $3 million in cap space. So to answer Tyrell's question, look for Nick Foles to get cut. Trust me.
I think that it's just
they'll have Ellinger, Minshew, and the rookie. Foles is gone.
Yeah, I would agree. And they're just kind of hanging on to him. There's really no, like you said earlier, there's not a big incentive for them to go ahead and just cut ties with them. But I fully expect the same thing. Were you a little bit surprised that Kenny Moore and Ryan Kelly made it through the roster bonus process, which probably indicates that they would like to keep those guys if possible?
It's more surprising for Kelly than it is for Moore, just because like they have no depth at corner. All right. Like even if you sign another corner right now, let's say you lose Moore hypothetically, you literally Your number one corner is Isaiah Rodgers Sr., who, as great as he is not ready to be a number one corner. And then it gets pretty murky. It becomes Dallas Flowers, I believe, and maybe I'm forgetting somebody, but I mean, they need depth bad. So I think they're going to keep more, probably sign one more free agent, draft maybe 2 corners.
Yeah.
But I do think that the fact that they're keeping Kelly is saying, hey, we want the center to be here for a rookie quarterback. I think that they're going to keep Ryan Kelly. But I would not be surprised if they move Kelly. I would be if they move more, because they need depth, and there's centers that they can pick up in free agency and in the draft.
I would agree 100%. Yeah, I was a little bit surprised that they went that direction as well. There were a little bit of rumors out that they were going to try, they would potentially move those guys. Doesn't look like they got any suitors, when it came right now.
Or with Mo Alley-Cox, like that. He was also rumored to get moved, and still tight end 4. I say tight end 4 because I think Andrew Ogletree beats him out.
Yeah. I mean,
No offense.
That's one of those contracts that he paid, and I think if you gave him a little bit of truth serum, him being Chris Ballard, I think he would be a little bit disappointed that he signed that 3-year, $18 million.
Let's restructure, Mo, if you want to stay on the team.
Yeah. How about a pay cut, or how about we're asking, but we're not really asking? We're telling you this is what's going to have to happen, or you're going to be looking for a new job. But
very fair.
We'll see, guys. Really, really appreciate you joining in, interacting with us. Want to do a quick one. We know March Madness is out there, but we still want to touch base. We love doing these live streams, and we also love having Drake on, man. It's so cool to hear your perspective. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Adam Herbside, Colton, Adam Roberts, Adam Jameson, Nomad popped in here. So many other people had so many cool things to say. Thank you so much. If you haven't joined the family, go ahead and do that. Like, rate, review, share, subscribe. Until next time, as always, I love you, Drake loves you, and go Colts.